Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody. My apologies for that. We did try it at 1 o'clock, but as things happen, things do change. So we're going to look at the journalism honor. And of course, I'm an English teacher. I've been teaching English for many, many years. I have a degree in English. I love literature and I also love business. So I teach all three subjects, but I've always been interested in English as a language and the written word and the spoken word. And the journalism honor is really interesting because once you develop your writing, you'll be able to do so much better at school. And of course, it's practical. You will be able to write articles for the Pathfinder Club, for your church, whatever it may be. So I'm going to skip this part. Pastor Herman already introduced me, so that's fine. I'm going to skip it. Let's look a little bit at the requirements. And what we'll do is we'll just touch on them because I'm going to be explaining parts of them as we go along. We're going to look at the elements of a good, hold on. We're going to look at the elements of a good lead paragraph and the use and importance of headlines. So I'll define those terms and we're going to have examples from you. I was impressed, Dion, with the way people kept on writing in the chat. I hope they'll do the same for me. So that was well done. You're going to also write a news article of at least 3 paragraphs with a good lead paragraph. Now, this is for something interesting that's happened maybe at church or at school, maybe even at your house, at the Pathfinder Club. It's really up to you. You choose any topic and I will actually help you to develop that particular article or story. We're going to look at the essentials for writing a good story, and I have about 2 or 3 slides on that one. So we'll go through it. And then we'll also know the difference between passive and active verbs. Of course, I was saying to Pastor Herman, I want you to become an English lesson, but we have to know the difference between them because you're going to be writing mainly in the active instead of in the passive, okay? We also want to look at you writing to a publisher. And I've contacted David Neal. He's the editor at The Messenger, right here at Stanborough Press. And he's more than happy for any of you to write to him. So we actually have his email address there, and he'll be just waiting for you to contact him. And then he will give you the details, whatever it is you need. Now, here, this is where you're going to choose. So it says here, write a story on any of the following. How your family first accepted Christ, whether it's you, your parents, or your grandparents. Now, I've taught not the Rangers, before Rangers, explorers, how to write a personal testimony, because this here is part of it, but you're going to develop it into more of a story. You're going to look at your personal experiences of answered prayer, and we all have those stories. I'm always encouraging people to write, their own personal story about how God has answered prayers. It's amazing how God answers our prayers. He's such a loving God. Then an interesting pet as well. And I think in the past, I've had somebody writing about a snake. I don't talk much about snakes, but I'll have you people know that I once had to kill a snake, which people in England don't like to hear. But I had to. It had bitten my son. So I had no choice. It was going to bite other children, but it was not a pet. You might have one as a pet and you can tell us something about it. You also can tell us an experience you've had while at summer camp or on a camping trip. Now, if you've gone camping with Pathfinders, you should have lots of stories. I wasn't here when I didn't go with the Pathfinders when they went somewhere in Europe, and they say it rained so much that some tents actually moved downhill. People's tents just started moving because everything was so wet. So there must be some story you can tell about a camping trip. And then, of course, this is your personal testimony when Jesus became your personal savior. Very, very important one. I like that one because you never know when you're going to use it. And then, of course, this one is challenging. What is the challenge for you being a Christian today? And as a young person, you have your own challenges. As an older person, I have my own challenges. Then you're going to submit your story or your article. It would be nice if you could submit it to Messenger, but maybe you can submit it somewhere else. You're going to do your cover letter. I have an example for you. And then, of course, we're going to look briefly at the education in getting into the career of journalism, the types of jobs available. I have some slides on that one. And of course, what's really important is hopefully you'll be able to write some good English, good grammar. So this is now for you, for the chats. What do journalists do? Just 1 or 2 sentences, or maybe just a few words. What do you think journalists do?
All right, we have a question.
I'm going to give you like 2 minutes. What do journalists do?
Let's answer that question. Please do use a chat section in the Zoom or the comment section on Facebook. Usually takes about 5-6 seconds for Facebook to catch up with the Zoom.
That's okay.
All right. And let's see what we have. Okay, we have a discover and tell news. All
Yep.
right. Other commenters saying they're writing stories.
Yes.
So there is quite a few different answers.
Sure. No, that's good. People have the main gist of it is they do go and gather information. They do a lot of research and then they write stories. And their stories normally have to be quite accurate and they have to write with integrity. So they've got to write the truth. Because if they don't write the truth, and I'm going to talk about that later when we're talking about the guidelines, they can actually destroy people's lives. So we're going to look at types of journalists and the guidelines for them a little later. So you've done that, thank you. Now let's go first to the first one of the requirements there where they talk about headlines. You've got the worksheets and I've got some examples of headlines here. So we've got this one that just says coronavirus. We've got this one that says panic something. In my head straight away, I'm saying panicking in terms of buying. I walked into Asda when lockdown was first announced and I was shocked. All the shelves were empty. I felt that I was in the wrong place. So I said to this person standing next to me, I always talk to people, you know, I like people. I said, what's happened? They said, people are panicking. They panic buying. They're so scared that we're going on lockdown. There'll be no toilet paper. There'll be no food. So that was quite interesting for me. When you look at each of these headlines, it says something to you. So what you're going to have to do is immediately now start thinking of headlines that you can use. Normally, it's just a short, nice, a strong phrase. So it might have alliteration in it. Alliteration is where two words sound the same, like a slippery snake, or it might be something that just catches your attention, a strong word. I mean, when we see coronavirus straight away, we know that that's something serious, or we see COVID-19. So a strong headline is going to be the first thing that you're going to actually come up with and write down at some point. Even if you don't do it now, you've got the worksheets. You need to have some good examples of good headlines for any topic, any story that you want, okay? Now, because I'm conscious of time when I talk a lot, I think I'm going to probably have to skip some of the parts where I put type in the chat. You've already shown that you are participating well, and thank you for that, but I think we'll move on. So when you create your own headline, this is one I said we're going to skip the chat. When you create your own headline, you're going to just have a bit of punctuation there, and think of that strong image that you want to create. So if you were talking about something to do with camping, you might have one or two words that show us that it was camping. If it's an event that's still going to happen at church, maybe or a virtual event even, think about how you can actually write it so that it actually grabs the attention of the reader, okay? So you're going to do that at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be now. So let's look at the elements of a good lead paragraph. Now, the lead paragraph is the first paragraph of an article. What it does is it summarizes the whole story. It's very brief, though, and it actually gives you information like who we're talking about, where this event is taking place, or where the event took place, who's involved, why it happened, and that sort of information. So the newspaper or the magazine article will have all that right in that first paragraph. It doesn't give all the details away, but it's just maybe 2 or 3 sentences. And I do have an example for you. So they normally have it right at the beginning. They've got a good headline. They might have a bit of a subheading, and then they have a good lead paragraph. Also remember, in newspapers, it's written in columns. So although it's 2 or 3 sentences or 1 or 2 sentences, it looks a bit longer, okay? So bear that in mind. So this is an example of a good lead paragraph. This is quite recent. Like I said, it was Anti-Bullying Week. And this says, rally to bring awareness to bullying, okay? And we've got an image there. Normally an image has what we call a caption. So it has a little, a phrase there. And this is the lead paragraph. After an outpouring of responses to her daughter's bullying experience from both kids and parents, mother Tara Murphy decided something needed to be done. That's a very good opening paragraph because it's telling us straight away that there's a girl that's been bullied. Her mother is Tara Murphy, and they've taken action. And of course, in the headline, there was a very important word, the word rally. So what the mother and daughter decided to do, which the next paragraph tells us, which we're not going to use, is that they decided to hold a big rally. And of course, everybody responded. We all know what the issue is with bullying in the UK, or worldwide actually, and we do take it seriously, very, very seriously, yeah? So that's your lead paragraph. So you're going to think about how you can actually introduce your story or introduce your topic, and you want it to be very powerful, strong. You want to think of words that will grab the reader's attention and therefore make people really want to carry on reading. So this is what we sometimes call the hook. In this particular passage, I think it's the word bullying. I don't know if any of you have any other ideas of what you think the hook might be. But I think once I see the word bullying personally, as an adult, as a teacher, as a Pathfinder counselor, I'm definitely sitting up. I want to hear something more. And I want to know, what am I going to be able to do to help? What can I do? So I'm assuming that you do the same. Okay. I'm going to pause here. Any questions on the lead paragraph? Any comments? Any clarification needed?
Oh, somebody says you're going too fast.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know what? No, it's true. I do
Yes,
speak
that's
very,
fine.
very fast. So now I'll try and slow down, but also, Pastor Herman,
but
it's
we
the
need to know.
time.
Yeah, we need to tell the folks that, you know, the video will always be on the website, so
Okay.
people could go back and, you know, look at it again if they missed
Sure.
anything.
No, but I will try and slow down. But what time am I expected to stop?
5:30.
Okay. No, that's fine. I will try and slow down, and just keep on reminding me as well, please, so that, you know, I can actually slow down. It would be good. But like I said, any questions on the lead paragraph, because this is important for when you're writing your article. And I'll show you the inverted pyramid in a while, but you do need to have a good opening paragraph. For
So
those
is the
who are
lead
doing
paragraph the one thing that you said about a hook? So is that
Yes.
the lead paragraph to attract people's attention?
Yes, and to keep
want
them
to read
interested.
further.
Yes.
Yes,
They must be
okay.
interested enough. If it's not strong enough, they'll read it and think, you know what, I'd rather read another article.
Yes.
So it must be strong enough, and it must have good, strong words in there that will attract people's attention. And in this case, they even named the woman, you know, Tara Murphy, that's the mother. They gave her full name, and of course, she took action. So she decided to do something. And that was, you know, something that actually then, it's a whole article. You saw it. I'll just go back. You saw that whole article. Yeah.
So it's like a good smell from the kitchen.
Please don't talk
Get
about
the smell
food,
from the
Pastor.
kitchen. You wanna go in there and eat. Is that right?
Definitely. Yeah, you want to carry on. So that's the lead paragraph. So when you're actually creating your article, you're going to be saying to yourself, how am I going to start it? What's the middle and what's the end? And we're going to go through a bit of that. I just wanted to just highlight a few journalists to you. I have all these names, but I just chose two, Christian Amanpour and Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux is the one now who is very famous for going into prisons, especially. He will go into a prison. He will talk to the prisoners. He's been to talk to people on death row. He's a very well-known, he's very sincere. He has a lot of integrity, and he seems to empathize with people very well. You know, he puts himself in their lives and what's happening with them. So there's a lot of others, but these are quite well-known journalists. I also knew a journalist when I lived in Zimbabwe. His name was, he was with Thames Television, Julian Mannion. Julian Mannion was a Thames Television journalist. And I had great admiration for him, because I think journalists put their lives at risk. You know, he had come to Zimbabwe just at the time of independence to come and actually interview the president and, you know, everybody who was, you know, involved in the elections. But it can be risky. But those are journalists. We now want to look at the essentials for writing a good story. So you need to understand your subject. The subject is the topic or what you're writing about. If you're Pathfinder, for example, and maybe even want to write about Pastor Herman putting all these e-honors, you know, online, you need to first of all speak to Pastor Herman, find out how many e-honors there are, when did they put them up, how are they helping. You need to speak to some Pathfinders. Are they enjoying them? Are they doing them? And the audience in this case would be easy, because it would be the Pathfinders. But if it was a different topic, maybe that you want to write, you want to send a story to the messenger, you would need to think of who your audience is. Now, the messenger basically aims at all Adventists. I think the age is quite a wide range. Maybe it's from, I don't know, 7-year-olds right through to 90-year-olds. So you need to know your audience. Who are they? What are they interested in? Would they be interested in reading what you're writing about? And this is where that story leads. The first paragraph should hook the audience. So you want to rein them in and really get them interested in what you're writing about. Now, I told you people, I'm an English teacher, and I'm very, very blessed. In most of my classes, I have at least two very strong writers. with a lovely writing style. And as soon as they write something, I just think, oh, this is so interesting. I'd like to read more. So it's really good that people can, these young people are almost to me like maybe they could write books or they could become journalists, because at quite a young age, some of them have a good writing style. So what you want to do is hook your audience in and then keep them interested. So as Pastor Herman has said, maybe it's that good smell, or your interest is aroused a little bit because of a word that they put there, or it's a topic that you think you're quite interested in, okay? So you must understand or know your subject, and then of course, definitely know your audience. Who are you targeting? For me, for example, if I wanted to do some article on revision or how to pass GCSEs, I would definitely be aiming at your 10s and 11s. I'm also an A-level teacher. So if I wanted to do something for A-level students, I would probably maybe think of something like A-level business, and I would create some material for them. But different audiences require you to prepare in a different way, okay? I'm going to be moving on. So if anybody has any questions just about the subject and about the audience, they need to put it in the chat. And then, of course, I'll get the feedback. I'm going to move on now. So you're going to keep the audience interested. Now, this is to do with your writing style and with the way you're developing the story. So you have to, you see, I've always said to my students, think about writing just the way you think about music. In music, you have different types of music. You have your pauses. You have the different things you do. Writing is the same thing. You have to have your capital letters and full stops. You have to have your punctuation. So you have your commas, you have your dash, you have your question mark, you have your exclamation mark. You also have very good words. So you have your nouns, you have your verbs, you have your adjectives. And you need to build an image or imagery that will keep your audience interested. So what you're going to do is you're going to use what we call language features. You can either use persuasive features, where you're going to try and persuade your audience to do something, or you're going to use maybe arguing, where you use connectives. If you're using something a bit more descriptive, you're going to have adjectives, you're going to have the senses there. So all those things are going to combine to ensure that the audience stays interested. Now, personally, I like reading. So, the article has to really be boring for me to stop reading, but not everybody is like that. Some people like an article that's really interesting. If it's not interesting, they will not continue to read it at all. So as a journalist or as somebody who's interested in writing good stories for magazines and newspapers, you have to make sure that you really have hooked your audience in and you keep them interested. So the body of your story is going to now build and develop what you wrote in the lead paragraph. So I don't want to go back to the story about the rally, but if you go through that article, you'll find that they really develop it. They talk about how they organized it, the people who attended it. It's such an interesting article. And what's nice, I think, for me, is that it was just really an ordinary mother. She wasn't a great organizer of events, and she decided to do something. People rallied around her, gave her the support, and of course, she was able to have a very successful event. So that really worked really very, very well. So we're going to look at the audience again, and we're going to look at developing the story. You've got the lead, you've got the audience. Now you don't want to lose your audience. So you're going to continue to think about them. How could you actually present this article so that they'll still be interested? Are you going to get a witness statement? Are you going to just put in some statistics, some facts there that you've done some research on? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the research as well, although it's not in my slide. And it's called the inverted pyramid, which I'm going to go through in a bit more detail now. So there's the lead. That's the most important information. We're looking at those questions that we always use when we write newspaper articles, especially those in secondary school. I teach this from year 7. We're looking at who are the people involved? What happened? Where was it? In literature, we would call that the setting. Where did this take place? Who are the other people involved? Why did it happen? How did it happen? So of course, here it's giving us guidelines with words. I don't normally give guidelines. It just depends on you, but you want that hook. Then the crucial information now is building on what you've said in that lead paragraph. So you're giving us more details. What's the evidence? What's the background? Have you done some research? What are the full details? Who said what? When did they say it? Is it verified? Verified means you've actually confirmed it's true, okay? Are you going to have any quotations from people, or are you going to have speech, witness statements? Are you going to have photos? And if you have any pictures, you need to have captions, nice and short. So it will be a picture of the person, and you either have their name, or you'll say one of the witnesses, or you'll say the person themselves, the victim. So however you want to do that. If it's on TV, if you're presenting news of some sort, you'd have a video or an interview, and you might also have an audio. You know, you'd actually make sure that people can understand exactly what you're saying there. And if you can do it with something more, that's either a poster, a picture, a video, you know, maybe a paragraph of words from somebody, a witness statement, that is really going to help. So you're going to actually expand that topic and make sure that the details are very, very clear, so that whoever is following it can clearly know that this is where it is, this is what it has said, this is where we're moving to. And again, you know, if you're writing, this year might be at least maybe, it would take up probably about a third of what you're writing, and you'd then really develop it. And you'd be using your different discourses there, or you'd be using connectives. If you're actually doing a balanced argument, that's where you'd say, on the other hand, however, you know, you'd give people's point of views, you'd give your statistics as well. That's with proper research. You need to do proper research and find out, what did they say? Is this really what all the researchers say, or are there actually contradictions? And you'd say it. You're not afraid as a journalist to say, this is what one researcher said, however, this is what another researcher has said. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of contradictory stories right now about the coronavirus vaccine. People are saying, you know, if people take it, this is what's going to happen. The medical field are saying, no, people need it. If they don't take it, this is what's going to happen. And thirdly, we actually have a person in South Africa, Dr. Taliban, I think. He has come up with a complete new procedure. It's actually a medical procedure where he extracts these the little bubbles of mucus out of people, and it has never been done before. So there'll always be different viewpoints. So what you're trying to do in this part of your story is make sure you build on what you've said at the beginning. And then, of course, now right at the end, towards the end, you're going to give extra information. So the extra information here is, you know, is it related to what you've said before? Is it something new? Is it something that you got maybe from that's a bit more informal, like a blog, or maybe from an editorial, somebody's opinion? Have you actually spoken to another journalist who has actually given you this information, or maybe you picked it up from one of their articles? And of course, you would give credit as well. You don't want to pretend that you got all that information and, you know, it's all from you. You need to make sure you give credit, because that's where your integrity comes in. So we always say that you've got to be ethical as a journalist. You've got to write things that, you know, you can actually verify. And again, I'm going to stop here, taking the time. It's been for 3 minutes past. I think it's okay. Any questions, any clarification, any feedback, anything that I need to maybe go back to from anyone? No? Pastor Herman, are you there?
Hello, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. It was just
I'm
very
just saying,
silent.
do you have any questions that you want anybody to respond to?
Yes, I was going to say to them, you know, when they are writing, because of course, a lot of them I think are probably in secondary school, it's a similar principle to writing a good essay. I teach English. So of course, we do descriptive essays, we do writing to argue, we do informative essays, we do narratives, we do persuasive essays. So it's a similar principle. The only difference here is that you're not just writing a story for your teacher. In this case, you're going to write a story for the messenger, or for, you know, it's going to be published. It's a publication. So you're going to actually send it. So this is what I want the Pathfinders to think about. How can they make it an article rather than just a story in their book, you know, for their teacher? Sure. So that's all they're going to do, basically.
Okay. So keep going, sis.
Okay. So now we're looking at these essentials still. We're looking at journalists making sure that they don't misrepresent facts. Now, I was going to ask you people how we misrepresent facts. I want people to really understand this clearly. How would you misrepresent a fact just as a young person? And I need examples in the chat, because this year the guidelines are given by, you know, the Associated Press. The guidelines are really given to the journalists, and they need to stick to what they told, or else they can actually end up being sued, or, you know. So I want to know what we mean when we say misrepresent facts. What does that actually mean? In the chat.
Does anybody know? What do you want to share in terms of what you feel? What is misrepresenting facts? Your understanding. It's not fake news, is it?
That's fake. I also want to talk about that. Yeah,
facts.
misrepresenting facts.
Presenting facts. Anybody out there have an opinion? What do you think? All right. The chat seems to be quiet.
That's okay. So when we misrepresent facts, we take a bit of the truth, similar to what Satan did when he was in heaven. He took a bit of the truth and then he twisted it and he misrepresented God. So when you misrepresent facts, it means that you take a bit of the truth and then you change it and twist it or you add. And then, of course, it's altered. It's no longer the truth really in all its entirety. So you need to be very careful as a journalist, especially, that you don't misrepresent facts. You've got to tell it as it is. So you stick to your research and you stick to the factual information. Very, very important. Because the thing is, if you're writing, depending on what you're writing about, I remember reading a story once, somebody misrepresented their local authority. I don't know what they put in there. It was not just a misquote, but it wasn't true. And I think they apologized, and I think they were actually being threatened that, you better be careful, because if you don't write the truth about this local authority, it was something to do with housing, you will actually get into trouble. And then you see, because they come under a newspaper or a magazine, that is who's going to be sued. It's not the journalist in their personal capacity. It's normally the organization that they work for. So it's really, really important for them to know that they must actually, do a true representation of the facts.
Yeah, some even responded and saying, look, if we state the wrong statistics, for example, it's misrepresenting.
Oh, yes. Not, what? That's such a good example.
Things.
That is such a good example, because statistics can also be skewed or used inappropriately.
Yes.
Definitely. That's an excellent example, actually.
That's right.
I tend to think a lot in terms of words and just writing, but numbers is also a very good way to illustrate that. That's true. Thank you so much.
So somebody could, in other words, if 1,000 people, if there's 1,000 people that you survey and only 10 respond, and 9 is for that, you can say 90%. But it's not really 90%.
It's misrepresenting. It's true. I mean, you did the survey, but it wasn't even the right amount of people. Thank you so much. Now, when it comes to the journalist writing the story, they have to use the correct style. And this is the Associated Press guide. I'm hoping I'll be able to actually go to the website. I think I put it in there, or I put a website, the link. So hopefully we can go there on my slide. So the journalist must be able to write in, standard English, first of all, which means that depending on who they're writing for, they need to really look at the way they're writing. I was teaching a class on Friday, and we're doing a diary entry. It's for one of our literature books. And the two of them said to me, Miss, can't we just write in slang or colloquial? And I said, no, because you have to write in standard English. I'm going to mark you as a GCSE marker. So when the journalist is writing the article, they've got to write in standard English, depending on who and what they're writing for. They can use a little informal English, but they have to be very careful with slang and colloquial terms, simply because some of the slang and colloquial terms are not known worldwide or not by everybody. So they need to be very, very careful. So they need to make sure that it's in standard English. And then, of course, the style of writing is really dependent on the person themselves and on the publication. So if it's a teenage magazine, for example, it will be written maybe in a more fun way with lots of pictures, lots of fun things. If it's a ladies magazine and maybe more to do with parenting, it will be written in a certain way, maybe with a bit more information about doctors and what they say about when a baby is born. If it's a magazine maybe aimed at men who like cars, well, I shouldn't say men, I like cars, I like Lamborghinis, I like cars. It will be more in that style of writing, it will have pictures, it will have maybe the engine size of the car, it will tell us how fast it can go. So that must all be consistent with what the journalist is trying to put across. Because if it is about a car and the person is interested, they want to read it, they want to get to the end of the article. If it's not consistent and it's a bit of a mixed up article, people will not want to actually read it to the end. So we have something called the Associated Press. It's actually, it's like a book. They call it the Journalism Bible. I don't like to use the word Bible for anything except our Bible, which is a holy Bible. But the world out there tends to use the Bible for something that's important. So they call it the Associated Press. And it gives guidelines for various aspects of writing. And I found this interesting because I was trying to tell my students that, you know, you write numbers according to certain conventions. When you're writing a number, oh, there were 10 people, you actually spell it, T-E-N. You don't put 10, 1, 0. And I was trying to figure out where I learned it because I said to them, I'll find them the website. But I realized that I know it because I've been reading the Associated Press guide for many years. I've always read it or referred myself to it. They give very clear guidelines for almost everything. How you refer to the First Lady, whether it's a capital L or not, how you actually write it when you're writing your article if you're a political writer, how you refer to maybe street names, how you refer to maybe countries and their capitals. Very interesting. So they give a guide to grammar, to spelling, to word usage. You know, they're very careful, even the way you use words. They'll explain it in there that, you know, you can use this word in this situation or context, but you can't use it in this circumstances. So that's really, really good. And of course, in England, we're going to use the one that applies to, you know, we have British English, and then of course we have American English. And again, you need to be careful with that one because the spellings are different. And at GCSE or in our country anyway, you must use British spellings, and, you know, you must be able to present your work the way we prefer it. Now, just for interest's sake as well, I teach at Stanborough, and many times we get international students, and they seldom use their margins. I've taught students from Spain, from Brazil. They, you know, we use a margin and we put our numbers on the left-hand side of the margin very clearly. Now, they don't actually work, they don't write like that. So you'll be surprised that some countries have their own way of writing and presenting information. Very, very interesting. But the Associated Press guidelines will give you the guidelines that you need to make sure that as a journalist, you are definitely using, you know, the correct procedure, the correct outline, the correct words. And of course, they also identify the reference of resources that you can rely on and the way you should present them. And all of you, especially those of you who are maybe now in year 11 going to A levels, when you go to university especially, you have to list your resources and you have to actually write them in a certain way. So you have to use references. And even within the text, well, now when you're at university, you've got to write it in a certain way. So this is the Associated Press will give guidelines for all that. So I'm going to see if I can actually get there. I'm not sure I can. I'm going to try. Oh, yeah, we might be able to. Let's see. There you go. Yep. Can you people see that, Pastor Herman? Can you people see this?
No, Eileen, you can't.
Eileen, you can't.
Okay. No, let me just go back. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I think what happened is it's out of the sharing now.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can just come back. Where is it? How do I get out of here now?
No, you're installing the PowerPoint.
Oh, good. Phew. Okay. Because I've come by myself. Okay, I'll just read from here. So let's just stop there. It says here, the new AP style book includes 100 technology terms and digital security. So the digital security is for people who actually are doing a lot of work online, and it gives some very good guidelines. But, you know, I wanted to show you people the image of the book itself. It has everything in it. And if anybody is really interested in journalism, it will be good for them, you know, to just, you know, literally go back and just see what the expectation is. Very, very interesting. Right, so let's see if I can get out of here now. Hey, Pastor Herman, if I come out of here, I don't need to. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's fine. So we won't think, we'll just move on. Let's move on. So in this edition that I wanted to show you people, there are some very interesting references to different things like how journalists must secure their devices, especially, you know, if they're going to do some interviewing overseas, or I think even digital online interviewing, their online accounts as well, their reporting material, and they need to be sure that however they do it, they're going to avoid embarrassment. Because what happens is people begin to really get irritated with certain journalists, the way they write, the things they say. And then they also have sort of like guidelines on things like sexual abuse, sexual assault, sexual harassment, misconduct. So there's certain questions journalists can ask. There's certain ways they can behave. If they don't behave in a certain way, again, they're going to end up getting, getting into some problems with the law. So they need to be very, very careful with that as well. They've got new entries on coronaviruses because I was just reading on Twitter, actually, that when they first talk about it, it's one word, they say coronavirus, and they explain it's COVID-19, because coronaviruses are many. So they say coronavirus, COVID-19. Then after that, all they've got to do is just continue to refer to COVID-19. That shows that this is the most recent virus, okay? So there's all those terms, and that's what they do, and that helps them to actually give us, the people, the correct information. Because many of us get our information from sitting and watching the news, from listening to the news, or from even reading. I prefer to read. So that's guidelines for writing, okay? So now we come to this part of passive and active verbs. And you need to, your worksheet says, I don't know, Pastor Herman, I'm quite sad. It's already 1:15. I had wanted to go to the worksheet and work through it, but I'm not sure we will. We'll try. But in the worksheet, it says you must know the difference between passive and active verbs. So the passive is when you say the piano was played by the girl. So the piano is actually the subject, and the girl went and sat and then she played. But if it's active, it's the girl who you're focusing on, and you say the girl played the piano. Now, I was saying that this is a whole English lesson. It's a passive and active voice. We call it voice, not verb. I stuck to verb because that's what your worksheet says, but we call it voice, the passive and active voice. So again, what you're going to need to do is just do a bit more work on it, but you have to give 3 examples. So if you're using this one, the piano was played by the girl played the piano, it's actually showing you the difference. And it is in terms of the action that the girl actually is showing. So it's just the way it's written. She still played the piano, but the piano was played by her. And then, of course, she went over, sat down, and played it. We're going to move on now. This is the formal letter guide, the guidelines, and the cover letter. A formal letter is like a business letter. It has a proper, correct layout. Now, I know many of you may not even be familiar with letter writing because obviously you don't need to do it anymore. But when you apply for jobs or when you have to write something quite formal, you're going to have to use the formal layout of a letter. So it's standard English again, correct grammar, correct spelling. Very, very important. So I'm going to show you how to do the guidelines for requesting information, how you can actually have the essential points for writing a story. And then you're going to also do a cover letter. Okay, so let's see if we can look at that. So this is the request for guidelines, for story writing guidelines. You're going to start off by saying, dear sir or madam, either. If you know the person, like Dr. Neil, like David Neil, sorry, you'd say, dear Mr. Neil, but you'd have to end differently. You'd end by saying yours sincerely. If you don't know the person, you end by saying yours faithfully. So if it's dear sir or madam, you'll end by saying yours faithfully. So we actually have RE, which means that that's your reference. Request for story writing guidelines. So that's your little heading. You'd bold it. Then with reference to the above, please may I have your story writing guidelines. So all they would do is they would get the handout and they'll just send it to you. They have them prepared and ready. So you would say, I'm an aspiring writer and would like to submit an article about an event at my church or Pathfinders, whatever it is that will take place on whatever day it is. You can also say, I would like to write an article based on whatever it is. It's up to you. That's up to you. And then, of course, I've added this in. May I also have your deadlines for the submission of articles. Now, why you need that is when you finish writing your article, whatever it is you're writing, you need to post it so that it gets there on time. And if it's an event that took place and then you want to try and send it in 2 or 3 months' time, it won't work. So you need to be quite proactive. Once the event has happened, write it up, maybe the next day, send it off so that it can actually be accepted and published. And it's very exciting when you see your work published because your name is going to be next to it, and people will know that you've written it. So those are just the guidelines for the story writing. That's what you want. You want to actually know how they want you to write it. If it's messenger, they might say they want something maybe to do with Pathfinders or an event. If it's something to do like with the ladies fashion magazine, they might say they want the latest story of how people are reacting to the latest fashion show that just took place. Okay, so bear that in mind. But this is the layout for your request. Can I move on? I think I will. So this is the cover letter now. You've done your article, you've read it, you've proofread it, you've asked somebody to proofread it for you. You want to make sure that every single aspect of that article is written well. So you get different people to do proofreading. I do so much proofreading all the time, and I'm always finding errors. Even after I've proofread it once, when I proofread it again, I inevitably still find one or two more errors. So please get somebody to proofread it for you. So this is now your cover letter. Dear Sir or Madam, resubmission of article. Please find attached my article entitled, you put the title of your article. It is about an event. So if it was Pathfinders, for example, Pathfinder Rally that took place on such and such a time at such and such a date. Why you have to do that is to ensure that they can pick up straight away if they're going to use it or not, because they get so many applications, so many people asking, can they have the articles published? So if you do that, then the editor knows straight away, oh yes, I'm very interested. That's a nice community event. Let me see if I can actually use this article. And again, take note, you are ending yours faithfully because you don't know the person. So if you write dear sir or madam, you end yours faithfully. If you start off by saying dear Mrs. Hussey, dear Mr. Neil, dear Pastor Cliff, well, if you use any of our names, you're going to end with yours sincerely. Okay, so bear that in mind, please. You're going to write both letters, please, and you're going to make sure that you include them in your folder. So just write them as well as you can, and it'll be nice if that is then also in your folder with all the work you're doing on your honors. I like them. I like the honors to be practical, so that if you need to do it for real, even at GCSE, if they ask you to write a business letter, you might remember, oh, I remember doing that journalism honor, and I remember Mrs. Hussey telling us about a business letter format. So you'll know what to do. Because at GCSE, you could be asked to do anything. It could be a speech, it could be a business letter, you know. So the format is very important.
This is a very practical one, Mrs. Hussey.
Yes.
Just a question somebody asked, how do you get over writer's block? What is writer's block and how do you get over that?
Now that one, oh my goodness, that one is so challenging because I don't often experience it, to be honest. But you know what happens? You're stuck and you just don't know what to write next. So I normally say, relax, take some deep breaths. Go back. If you've written at least the first paragraph, that's going to help. If you haven't, just start writing anything. So say you've got your topic and let's say it's Pathfinder Rally. You can say to yourself, maybe I should mention that it was organized by Pastor Dan and Pastor Clifford first. Or maybe I should just say all the Pathfinder clubs gathered at such and such a place. So think of the setting, think of the people involved. Maybe if there's a theme, like with the rally, normally there is maybe a theme. So you need to start somewhere. But people get very crippled with writer's block. They get very afraid that they'll never be able to write. But you can. Even if you just write 2 or 3 sentences or list the words, that's the other tactic I use. I say to my students, if you're in an exam and you're so scared you can't write, just write some words, you know, write some words down. And then as you're looking at those words, you start thinking of what you're associating with the words. But that's a very good question, and it does happen sometimes. So just, you know, think about how you can overcome that writer's block, because it really does happen. So this is the request you're going to send to David Neal. He's editor of The Messenger, and that's for the British Isles. Editor, stanmorepress.org.uk. I emailed him. He says you are all more than welcome to write to him. He will try and respond, and please do. So just ask him for the guidelines, and then once you've written your article, you can send it to him. He'll give you very clear guidelines. The main problem with many of us is when they ask for a picture, they want it to be a very good, clear picture. And that's where some of us go a bit wrong. You know, we don't always provide a very good picture. But I'm really wishing you all the best, all of you, as you write your article for The Messenger. That will be fantastic. Okay, so
I think actually sorry, so Nuli said Pastor Hussey. Sister Hussey, that I know from Pastor Neil, he's actually very keen to have youth and young people.
He's very excited.
Yes, he's excited about youth and he's having a special page for young people and for youth. So I hope this is going to be interesting for people who want to write.
No, I wrote to him. I sent him an email. He said, Eileen, please tell them, I said to him, because I had to ask him for permission. I can't just put his email address. He said, no, sure, please go ahead. I have no problem with it. I'm looking forward to actually getting, the requests for the guidelines for story writing. So I thought that's fantastic. So it's quite practical. They can get them, they can then develop their writing. Some people use journals just to develop their writing if they don't know how to write long articles. If you write a journal entry just once a week and it's factual, it's not like a diary, you just write about what happened at school, at home, you find that your writing really develops. So I get my students to do an A4 page. I'll tell you, after about 3 months, they can write a very good essay because they've had the practice. But if you can write to David Neal, you'll be very happy to hear from young people, as Pastor Cliff says. So please do write to him. Journalism as a career. Oh my goodness. Now this one, there was so much information that I decided I cannot write everything, honestly. Educational requirements, I've told my students right from when they come to me, sometimes in year 9, you cannot do anything without GCSE English. And I want you to all know that. You need to be able to write. I was talking to one of my students who wants to be a pilot. And I said to him, well, you're going to have to at least put in the application. And if it's an apprenticeship, you might have to do some tests. So you have to get a good GCSE grade for your English. So you're starting off right from the beginning. So you get your good GCSE grade. Some people may continue then and try and do creative writing for A levels. I had a student who actually did an early A level when he was at my school, and I took him through creative writing, and he really did well. So you may want to do that for your A levels. So that's going to help you develop the writing especially. And then, of course, there's so many universities that offer journalism, and it's a very exciting profession. When I finished my A levels, it was one of the things I thought I might be able to do. I went for the interview. We were about, I think, 30 or 40 of us. And I just got through, I think, to the second part of the interview. They liked my article. They interviewed me. And then I just didn't make it to the third stage. So I ended up going into administration. And again, it was the same thing. I think there were over 700 applicants. It was cut down to 50. And finally, about 17 of us were finally chosen. So I was chosen for that. And I went into administration and business. But you need to just, do your own research and find out which universities are really the best. Then after that, you have to find an organization that can help you now with on-the-job training, especially. So you might have a sandwich, we call it a sandwich here, where you have a 1-year break, and that's for your placement. So you actually go into that organization and you learn everything that you need to learn as a journalist. And then, of course, the salary will range. It might start off with as low as, I think it's the 18,000. I just put all this down, and it can go right up if you're a top journalist flying all over the world. Who knows, you could earn maybe up to 60,000 is very possible, maybe even more. So you'd need to do a bit more research on the journalism. Now this year I'm going to skip as well, because this is a very good, it's a very good site. It tells you the 9 types of journalism. Pastor Cliff, I can't believe it's 1728, honestly, I can't. But this year has 9 different types of journalism, journalists that you can actually look at and decide, which one is the best one for you. So of course you have the ones who are going to be on TV, you're going to be the ones who are maybe with a newspaper, and there's so many. So when you have a moment, you can actually look at that. And then we have types of jobs associated with journalism. So you could be a broadcaster, you could be a freelance author, you could be a photojournalist, publisher. That's a real nice one, because if you're good with your camera, then you can write, little captions, and you can actually do some good work. So that's that one. And then, of course, oh, good. So I thought I had one more slide. I've just made it to 1728. Now, I found many Bible verses that deal with writing, that deal with expressing ourselves, but I did like this one. The psalmist says, "My heart overflows with a good theme. I address my verses to the King. My tongue is the pen of a ready writer." So our words help us to create images. Our words help us to convey the way we feel. Our words help us to encourage other people. So when we write, we need to be responsible. And it actually, when I was thinking about this verse, it took me back to a school I used to work at in Luton. It was a school on special measures, and I was helping actually with business. And I caught 2 students passing a note. Okay, so it was just a note. And I just said, I stopped them. I said, "Don't pass notes during my lesson." And I took the note. Then when I went to my desk, I opened it, and I was quite horrified. The note was actually discussing another student in that class, and they were passing it around the class. So of course I had to have a very good talk with these students and say, your words can damage another person very easily. You know, how do you think they would feel? So we need to be responsible when we speak. We need to be responsible when we write. We need to be, you know, people who say words of encouragement rather than words of discouragement, because it's very easy to discourage others. We don't support them. We don't, accept or rejoice in their successes, you know. So I think it would be very good for us to consider what we're writing, who we're writing to, how we're writing it, and even the words we say verbally. Now, in this text, in this Bible verse as well, because I'm a literature teacher, I like the use of the word theme, because that's just a cluster of ideas. When we talk about a theme, it just means you have a central idea and it's just the ideas around it. And then, of course, I love the word verses, because that could apply to the Bible. It could also apply to poetry. I hope there's some of you out there who do poetry as well, because I really love poetry and it's a good way to express yourself. And of course, again, here it says that the tongue is the pen of a ready writer. So really, I want to encourage you to think about how you can use your integrity and honesty. Write a story that is true, that can help someone. Because if the story is not true, it can destroy a person's reputation. More so, if you have not done enough research, you don't have enough facts, then honestly, don't write it. As a matter of fact, they say if you don't think something is true, you shouldn't even say it either. But you know, a story can actually destroy, an untrue story can destroy a person's reputation. So I want you to go and complete your honor. I want you to get your counselor to sign it off. And I'm praying and hoping that when you're doing the worksheet, which I really thought I would have at least 5 or 10 minutes to do with you, you're going to be able to fill in all the parts that you need to. And don't leave it for like next week or during December holidays. Do it as soon as you can. Then at least you'll get that honor. You'll know something about writing and journalism, and you know, you might be able to help somebody else. So God bless you. Thank you very much, Pastor Dayan and Pastor Cliff. It's been very interesting. And I really hope the Pathfinders can do this honor and complete it. And, you know, just have it signed off. And I look forward to them all being invested in their classes with their honors. Thank you.